Hello, wonderful people. I'm Cindy James. What you're about to listen to was recorded in the spring of 2019, a few months after my brother Stephen left this realm. It describes the last few days of his life, and what I didn't know at the time is that his departure would bring about a completion of a lot of other facets of my life. I'm no longer married. I no longer live in the place where I recorded that session. And with the exquisite pain and the exquisite pleasure of loving, of changing, of moving, I am so grateful every day, growing and growing, for the great gifts of my brother Stephen's life and for the energy that his love still pulsates to me and to the world. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you can receive just what you need to amplify your experience of being you and to enrich the relationships you have here still on this planet. Love and blessings, wonderful people.
This is a story I don't really want to tell, but I need to tell. And it's a story filled with feelings. And I'm full of feelings right now, and I want to share with you the story of how my younger brother, Stephen Francis Goff, left this earth realm. And he left it with so much love and inspiration and like a classic deathbed final charge to me. So my brother Stephen died on February 16th, 2019, and he was 51 years old. I'm the oldest of four. Now I'm getting a lot of practice saying I'm the oldest of three. Doesn't that get you? That shift in a number? You know, the power of the feeling and even numbers I feel right now. And I'm going to take a deep breath and relax and know that if my brother stood for anything in this life, it was to see the light side of it, because he loved laughing and he was hilarious. And when he laughed, you laughed. That's all there was to it. Even though half the time I had no idea what was funny, the fact that he was laughing was funny to me. My brother Stephen was someone who believed in me unconditionally. I mean, think about in your life right now. Do you have people that believe in you unconditionally, or as unconditionally as us mere mortals can? My brother Stephen was one of those people in my life. But sweet Lord, it wasn't always that way. I mean, we were siblings that tore each other down as a job description to tear each other down. My God, when we were younger, I was really like an evil genius. I was the oldest, and for most of the time it was Cindy, Michael, Stephen, my two brothers. My brother Michael, 11 months younger than me, and my brother Stephen, 18 months younger than him. And my sister Amy wasn't born for many years after that. But when we would drive in the car, I would pit one against the other. I was always on the team that made the other one feel bad. I just eternally apologize for that and eternally forgive myself for that personality trait, which I didn't invent, but I certainly inhabited. But my brother Stephen, the last few years of his life was such a support system for me as a human being, as a woman, as a healer, as just someone who loved to cook and laugh and tell stories about life, the wonder of life, about the wonder of spirituality, about travel, about our children, about everything. And the story comes to my heart. I'm breathing into my heart right now because I'm feeling a lot. That's a wonderful thing, by the way, to do. Like when you're anywhere and you're feeling a lot and you have the propensity to either shut down or just bull through it, whether it's in a business meeting or in a kerfuffle with your neighbor or your spouse or your children, I just want to tell you right now, you have universal carte blanche to take a deep breath and feel your feelings and give yourself some breathing space in this rat race of life. So I'm breathing now too, and I notice that when people give themselves that space, I can sometimes feel uncomfortable in this space. So if you're feeling uncomfortable now, just breathe in that all is well. And you're here listening to the story of a magnificent man. So my brother Stephen called me, or I called him, every week or two for the last many years. He had a schedule and I had a schedule that allowed for odd times to talk, especially daytimes to talk with my private practice. And he worked in China, lived in America in Seattle, but worked in China. So he was back and forth to China and then to Amsterdam, but always had weird hours, so we could catch each other. And sometime in the fall of 2018, around September, I became inspired to do something. The Unleashed, the Cindy McKeever project, began to be born. It was a glimmer in my eye. I didn't know what I was going to call it. But when I would tell people in my life, like the people close to me, that I wanted to do this, I would be met with some blank stares or some really non-committal responses that I imagined in the head, was thinking, oh, Jesus, what's she cooking up now? You know, what kind of thing is that? I don't want to be any part of that. I mean, that's my projection, totally my projection. But when I told Stephen this, he was so enthusiastic. He was like, yes, go for it, do it. Because he was someone who went and did big things around the world, really cool things. Stephen had a cooking show in Chinese. Stephen drove around China in a van. The name of the show was Galpanza Cooks. I mean, a big, huge, he had a lot of fat, God bless him, big fat American driving around with China, teaching them how to merge East and West cooking. He made a reality TV show pilot that we just now, 3 months after his death, saw for the first time. It's hilarious. And he always had some wild idea, some dream that he was cultivating. And so he was just immediately like, go for it, do it. So I was motivated to do this, and I was working with names, and then I hired my creative coordinator, Helen, who's been just instrumental in helping me. And my brother loved that I had someone that knew what they were doing, because he would hire some great people that knew what they were doing. When I say hire, get in business with, partnership with. He had wonderful friends. Especially remember hearing about his friends Hamish and Steve right now. So Steve was just that weekly support system. And on February 5th, 2019, I was getting a massage, as I'm wont to do, because I believe that massages are as essential to my well-being as breathing air and drinking water. Maybe not for everyone. I know people don't like to be touched, and I'm sorry for you people, because I think that to be able to receive that kind of touch for your whole entire body is just incredibly helpful to well-being, health, happiness, longevity, youth, everything. So I was having my massage, and I came out of that massage, and I had felt my brother Stephen during that massage. He flashed in, and I sent so much love to him, and I'd been feeling him a lot. I was met from when I opened my cell phone to a string of calls. My brother, my sister, my dad, my husband. And in that moment, I knew something had happened. And as I was looking at my phone, my husband called, and I answered, and I was still in the spa vestibule area, and I just said, Who? And he said, it's Stephen. He's had an aneurysm, and he's in a hospital in Seattle. Call your brother Michael. So I called my brother Michael, and I called my sister Amy. We hadn't yet told my dad. My brother couldn't do it. My sister couldn't do it, at least at that point. And we were in that split-second timing. Also, by the way, I'm all greased up. I'm I mean, my eyes are swollen from being in the phase cradle, and now they're crying, and I'm walking out, and the people there that I love at this spa, it's called Equilibrium Spa in Bryn Mawr, and they're the most beautiful human beings, loving and giving and open, helping me to get out the door. It was time to make the decision of what to do. First thing I had to do was get home safely. And I told my brother, Michael, that I would call my dad. And at that time, I was having my husband look at flights. My sister, who also lives in the Philadelphia area, was looking at the flights to get on with me. It was time to go out. It was time to go out now. So I called my dad, and I told him, Dad, something's happened, and it's not good. And he said, oh. And I said, it's Stephen. And he said, oh. He's alive. He's talking. But he's had an aneurysm, we've been told. We found out later it was a stroke. And I'm getting ready to fly out there. And so is Mike. And so is Amy. He said, do you think I should go? And I said, you need to follow what you feel. But if you want my opinion, yes, the time to go is right now. I remember that conversation as feeling like I was in the room with my dad, like physically with him. And I can say I think I disassociated a little to have that conversation with him. When I say disassociated from the intensity of my feelings so I could think clearly. Because there was still so much going on, like even what to pack. And what was really concerning me on packing is that being a healer, being someone who is blessed to have the job of being present when souls come into this world and when souls leave this world and everything in between, I wanted to bring my bag of cool stuff to help you, to help him, since that might be happening. So I called my best friend Jeanette and I said, can you take me to the airport in 15 minutes? Stephen's had an aneurysm and I need to go to Seattle now. And she was there in 15 minutes. And I packed 50 pounds worth of materials into a suitcase. Because as beautiful it was in Philadelphia at the time, rarely in February, it was snowing in Seattle, which apparently is rare. Freak snowstorms. So also renting a car, a big snow-worthy car, because apparently they don't know how to do plowing roads in Seattle either. And if you've been to Seattle, there's lots of hills. And he was transferred to a hospital in Tacoma, St. Joseph's Hospital, which is on the top of this massive hill. It looks like San Francisco to me. And so it's just the projection of even how to drive. So I met my sister at the airport and held each other and cried. Both of us on autopilot, which could also be called like God pilot, love pilot, momentum. I left a message for my sister-in-law Tamara to give to my brother Steve. My family and I, we love the movie It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. And if you've never seen that movie, it's a 3-hour movie. I don't know if it's from the 60s or the 70s. It's one of the funniest experiences of humanity that I've ever seen in my life. And it had a cast of characters of infinite comedic genius. And there's this one scene where Ethel Merman is being accosted by Terry Thomas and Milton Berle. And the scene is she's calling her son to come do something for them. They're on a race to discover this treasure that this criminal who just kicked the butt had left under the Big W, some tree in California. And she calls her son Sylvester. And now Sylvester likes to, in my opinion, smoke a lot of marijuana and beatnik and women. And I don't remember that actor's name, but my goodness, he's genius. If he's still on the planet, he's genius. And she calls and she says, Sylvester! And she starts to tell them that she's being accosted by her son-in-law, Milton Berle, And this Englishman, this horrible Englishman, Terry Thomas. And he goes off half-cocked, I'm coming, Mama. And she needs him to go get something for it. So it's this long process. But the reason why I'm telling the story is in my family, whenever something bad's happening, we inhabit the voice of the crazy apeshit Sylvester, who's not really listening to what is being asked of him. I'm coming, Mama. I'm coming, Mama. My Mama. They're doing my Mama. Coming, Mama. Sylvester! Listen to me. Don't come. Oh, I'm coming, Mama. So I left my sister-in-law a message. I wonder if she's kept that message. So Stephen, Amy, and I, we're all coming. We're coming, Mama. We're coming, Sylvester. We're coming. We're coming to see you. And a miracle of all miracles, I think we were on Alaska Airlines, not American, which I normally fly, which I do like American Airlines. But on Alaska Airlines, you can use text. So we thought for that 6-hour flight across the country, we were not going to have any idea what was going on. And what a blessing that we had full access to be texting and knowing what was going on. And so we arrived in the dark to a snowstorm in Seattle with ice and snow. And also, by the way, it was very biblical. It was like Jesus and Mary and there's no room at the inn. So apparently in Tacoma, Washington that weekend, there was barely a hotel to be had. We had to leave a hotel, and find an Airbnb night after night there because Michelle Obama was coming. Justin Bieber, and I want to say Willie Nelson, but it's someone like that, was also in Tacoma, Washington, which I'd never been before. So there was no room at the inn, so it was this crazy thing to get rooms. And then driving up that hill to the hospital. I'm going to sniff now, and everyone's safe here in my boogies. And coming into that room and seeing my brother Stephen. My brother Michael was already there. He'd gotten there earlier because he lives in Colorado. My sister Tamlar, she's so sweet. When she saw me, she gave me a hug. She goes, oh, Cindy McKeever's here. Everything's going to be okay now. I love her so much. She's like the type of crazy that I get. I mean, she's super genius, smart, funny, and she's got her personality quirks, and I love them. They just bring me joy. And then to go in and see Stephen in the bed. You know, we had been trying to prepare ourselves for this moment for a while because my brother Stephen, this huge force of love and light in the world, had issues taking care of his body. I mean, welcome to Earth, right? Like, who doesn't have issues taking care of their body? Maybe there's 5 people that don't have that issue. I don't know them. And he was very overweight and had been very overweight for a long period of time. And 51, my dad used to say to him, Steve, you don't see a lot of people this weight, mid-50s, 60s. You know, your body just can't sustain it. My brother Stephen and I would joke that, you go to doctors. In my family, there was 4 of us, and 2 of us were the fat ones and 2 were the skinny ones. So my brother Stephen and I were the fat ones, and my brother Michael and sister Amy were the skinny ones. And doctors would tell us, well, you need to eat less and exercise more. And we would say, like, oh, that's the secret? That's the deep, dark secret. I'm going to do it now. I just didn't know, but now I shall exercise more and eat less. Because obviously we're using food to feel good, to reward ourselves, to cover over feelings, to give us feelings, to try to manage being human here on the planet. And so Stephen's health had been very poor. And I had seen him. He and his family would come to the shore. We have a townhouse in Stone Harbor, New Jersey, down the shore. We got a place down the shore. And they came around Labor Day week, and his breathing was really difficult at that time, still happy and whole, but his body was really showing the signs of distress, cardiac distress. And I've learned a lot about codependency in the last couple years, and I used to try and save my brother Stephen. I was actually told that by family members, Cindy, you have to save Steve. And I took that like, I shall do it. I shall save him. I can do that. I'm all these things. I'm an integrative nutritional counselor. I'm a healer. I'm a lawyer. I'm a this. I'm a wonderful cook. I'm a wonderful conversationalist. I'm a lover. I'm a no God. Oh, I can do it. Oh, superhero Cindy. That doesn't work, by the way. And expends a lot of energy, which basically has the undercurrent of saying to someone else, I don't have faith in you. I'll do it for you. Which sounded like blasphemy to me. But over the years, I have come to learn about that my need to make other people happy or healthy has more to do with me being uncomfortable with my own feelings. Certainly, if someone hires me to be in service, that's totally different than me presuming what I know for somebody else. And even when I do work with my clients, I serve their intention, not my intention. I did that for a while. It boomerangs back energetically. It's not very whole. And I want to live from having faith in people, having faith in their relationship with the greater. I mean, death has a 100% success rate. So we're all leaving the planet. And how you come and go, I say this, how souls come and go, like whether it's birthing into this world or birthing out of this world, is really not something my baby dinosaur brain can figure out. So Stephen had that shore visit. For the first time, I didn't bend over backwards and kill myself to make sure that refrigerator was so stocked with every healthy freaking thing. And I didn't, would you like some vitamins with your breakfast, Steve? Would you like me to make you an arugula and asparagus omelet on whole grain toast with berries? Or how about this quinoa tabbouleh salad that I made? And I've got a fresh flounder from the fish market. Now, all these things are spectacular, but with the motivation to inject health into him and then he would feel better, I come to find out it's an unhealthy way to live with other people. It's also heresy if you're an Italian woman and a cook. So I'm actually violating the tenets of my cultural food beliefs. And instead, I just decided to love him as he was. I didn't try to avoid cheesesteak runs or buffalo chicken pizza. I didn't try to avoid going out to meals because what I could cook was healthier. I just didn't waste my time trying to fix someone who wasn't broken. I just got to love my brother, and I got to feel the pain of seeing him with labored breathing and seeing what his body went through at times. And I got to laugh with him and experience the beach with him and pray for my own support during whatever time would ensue. And the last day of the week, which kind of like an amazing thing happens, normally I would, in the back of my mind, want to bring up health. And I would tell him, because in the last few years, I felt like I was at a life and death point after my mom died, health-wise, and that I call it going into rehab, like this diet that I went on, the fast metabolism diet, which no wheat, no gluten, no dairy, no caffeine, no sugar, no soy, no alcohol, no enjoyment, no pleasure, no whatever diet. It was, and then all of these, it's designed to heal a metabolism, but I think it's like classic drug rehab, at least for someone going through food issues. And I went through that time and I shared with him. He was saying to me, I know I need to do something about my health and my weight. And I'm sorry, my mind's getting a little foggy right now. It's hard to tell this story and feel it. Something that's happened since his death is that my mind is a little loopy. In the sense that it goes into loops, trying to figure out the past. How am I safe in the present? It's quite a thing to lose a sibling who you love so much. But the point that I was trying to make was I didn't try to manipulate conversations during that week so I could bring up how supportive I would be of him going to a place or going to a gastric bypass doctor or this new vitamin that I just found or whatever it was. I didn't do that. I didn't waste my mental effort with that. And in the last day, as I was saying, we were at the kitchen table and he said to me, it was just he and I to begin with, and my sister Amy joined later. He said, I know I need to do something about my weight, my health. And I said, you don't need to do something about it, Steve. Which, again, blasphemy, because he really didn't need to do anything about it. I said, if you want to, like if you feel like you really want to, then you can. There's support out there. And I would say that the issues that I had with food was addictive. It was an addiction. It was using a substance, a mental craving and a physical craving and an obsession with food to try to help me feel good. And it's very hard to cure that, I think, separately. Even when I did that diet, I did it with other people. And so I was being supportive and encouraging without force, which was a really new feeling for me as a human being, I would say. And we were talking about like what would be helpful to him, like what he would like to do, like what would be interesting to him, what would be supportive to him. And he really couldn't come up with anything. And in my heart, I was thinking, like, I know from working with people when it's hard to find any enthusiasm about what you want to do, it might just be that you're not going to do anything about it. And to accept that, I accept that in people. I work with people with all stages of diseases too. And since death has a 100% success rate, there's nothing wrong with it. And when I work with someone who doesn't really talk about the physical healing in the body or isn't feeling very enthusiastic about a specific healing path or modality, I've come to know now that's because they're completing, not because they're not motivated or they don't love the people that they love on earth. It's just that they're completing. And I've learned to respect that. So I started to notice the energy of when I was talking to him about that there might not be that attachment to continuing to live for whatever reasons, perfectly designed that I can't know. But I said to him, I said, Steve, how long do you think you have to live? Like, how long do you think you're going to live at this current health level? And he said, oh, Cindy, not long, maybe 5-10 years max. And I said, sweetheart, you have so much less than that. I mean, 1-2 years maximum. And I said that with such compassion, not to be all I know something or to instill fear or to motivate him because of fear of death. It was just honest. I said, part of my job, I sense energy. I can tell things. It's short. And now I can tell you that I thought it was much shorter than that, but I wanted to give him more time, which was me manipulating, which I probably shouldn't have done. But universal forgiveness for being human here. My sister joined the conversation, and it was a beautiful conversation with Stephen. And they left the next day, and I will always remember standing outside at the bottom of the steps outside of my shore house and hugging him. In this moment, I feel in my torso, in my arms, in my head, in my legs, I feel that hug. It's infinite. I feel that hug. And we hugged each other, his big body holding mine, arms tight, chest to chest, or chest to belly, because I'm shorter than he was. And it was a long hug. I used to joke with Stephen, it's going to be a long hug. I'm a long hugger, not a quick hugger. But I didn't have to say anything to him. It was just, we were just there with each other. And I hugged him as if it might be the last. And it was joyful. It was not sad. It was grateful. I was present in that moment. And the gift of the being present in that moment is that I have it in this present moment. In any present moment, I want to call up that feeling. I get it. That's the miracle of the present moment. It's infinite. when you drop into your body and you be present and you accept when I accepted what was. So that was after Labor Day, September 2018. And for the next few months, he started to, during our conversations, he would often tell me how he was doing with his diet or weight. And I would get kind of sick to my stomach. I'm like, oh, I'm not your confessor. I didn't say that, but I thought, oh. And I would tell him, it's okay. I love you. It's okay. It's hard. It's hard stuff. And I'd also be encouraging because of course I wanted him to get healthy and live. So I would get like excited too and think, oh, Steve found it, like I found it. But around Christmas time, he started to talk about how, well, I'm not doing so good on my diet. And I would say, well, you don't have to tell me that. You know, you're an amazing human being. You're wonderful. You're good and you're bad. You're right and you're wrong, just like every human being. He's like, it's just hard. It's just hard, Cindy. I'm like, it is hard, Steve. That's why I got support. It's very hard. Like eating, addiction, it's the same when you have issues with eating. It's the disease of separateness, when you feel separate from belonging, separate from hope, separate from good feelings, separate from love, separate from the greater, however you know that. And it's not only very hard, it's impossible to cure a disease of separateness with more separateness. That's just science. I mean, that's not even anything personal. So we do need to be connected to something. And my brother Stephen always had a spiritual longing in him, even as young children. My younger brother Michael and my younger brother Stephen actually inspired me to go on this spiritual path. They gave me Joseph Campbell's book. I don't know if it was called A Hero's Journey, something about that, about the mythical path. And that was the first thing that I ever read, and that was young. That was like 12, 13, 14. They were talking like that. So I encouraged him. I told him about my spiritual practice, about my Tibetan breath work that I do, and how that supports me. And there's so many things out there. But the conversations we had in January were beautiful. But they just concerned more of our children, our jobs, the sports. He would talk to me, the sports. I sound like my grandmother. We always put the article "the" in front of it. When I went to law school, my roommate, I met her, not online. There wasn't online back then. Through some letter from the law school, we became roommates. We needed roommates. But for the first 3 weeks of law school, our apartment wasn't going to be ready, so we were going to live with my grandmother and my grandfather in Paoli. So we were going to Villanova Law School. And my grandmother, when I told her that this young woman from Long Island, my dear, dear friend Colleen, was going to be, well, she wasn't my dear friend then, she was just some stranger, was going to be living with us for 3 weeks, my roommate, would that be okay? She said, well, as long as she doesn't smoke the pot. My grandmother, the pot. So I love that article. So, anywho, that's a statement of mine too. Anywho, I love anywho. The mind just looped a little bit, so we'll take some deep breaths and bear with the grieving storyteller. That's kind of how I feel like right now. I'm the grieving storyteller. I didn't invent it. So I'm going to I was facilitating a workshop series called The Foundations of Happiness, and the theme was connecting to higher energy sources. So I was working with the other leaders, and I was called to feel that there was some higher energy source that wanted to be our guide for the spring series. And because I felt so strongly that the energy known as Archangel Azrael, or the angel of death, was going to be my personal guide for the spring series. And I got a little afraid. This was like January 27th. Why is the angel of death going to be my personal guide? But I couldn't shake it. That was my intuition. It was my knowing. That was the energy. The energy of the support for those that are crossing realms was going to be my personal guide for this series. I comforted myself in knowing that Archangel Azrael is also the angel of forgiveness. and of letting go and of rest. And how amazing that those are synonyms. Imagine that death, forgiveness, letting go, and rest are synonyms. So that's what I hung my hat on, because I didn't want anyone to die. And I wasn't actually thinking of my brother Stephen at that time. But I did feel the energy of that incredible support. And on February 5th, as I said, when I came out of my massage, I got those phone calls. And I have my cell phone with me right now because I have the message that my brother Michael left me, and I was going to play that right now. And what I'm realizing is I never listened to that message. I only read the voice transcription of it because it still has a red dot next to it. And I talked to my husband, Michael. Everyone's got to be a Michael, right? You know, let's call him that archangel. And I read his voice transcription. So in this moment, I'm going to be listening to my brother Michael's voice with you all. I'm going to figure out how to do that. Sweet Jesus. I mean, technology. Right now, I want to let you know that I'm praying for myself to do the most simple technological task. Sometimes I'm genius now. Oh, my God. Well, we've just had a hiatus to get some technical support. Helen has just come in to help me. Thank you, Helen. So here it is. I want to let you know some amazing thing that just happened. When I stopped the recording to try and figure out my phone transcription, my sister-in-law Tamara, my brother Stephen's wife, an email from her popped up about visiting in Stone Harbor this summer and dates for the end of August coming. It's just amazing, the connections. I mean, just amazing. Those kind of things, they're like a balm for the soul. Someone sent me a quote that grieving is all that incredible loving that we have within us that doesn't have anywhere to go. So when you're loving Stephen, it still can go somewhere, but not in that traditional way. But of course, my sister-in-law Tamara, I can love her. So here's my brother Michael telling me that there was something going on with.
Hi, Cindy. It's Michael. Calling. Can you give me a call back? Steve's in the hospital with a brain bleed. Anyway, they're trying to stabilize him. I'll try and send you a text, but I love you. Bye-bye.
God bless us. All right, so I'm going to pump up the jam a little. Pump it up, pump it up. We get to the hospital. As you know, I've already said that. We come in and just see Stephen. And in that moment, I thought everything is okay. Just seeing him. Just being with him. Being with my brother Michael, my sister Amy, my dad and his wife were on his way. My mom actually died 3.5 years before Stephen did on his birthday, which Stephen didn't like so much. But now, you know, the synchronicity is beautiful. And I got to talk to him. I mean, what a blessing that we all got there, because he was still coherent. He had pain in his head, or he didn't say he had pain in his head. He would just hold his head. But he could respond. He could speak, not always as clearly as you couldn't understand everything all the time, but really clear. He had lost vision in one of his eyes, but he could still open up and see. And we got to just be with him and talk with him. And came time to go home for the night. I mean, the Seattle snow ice storm with the hills and the dales and all of that. And my brother Michael was going to spend the night with him. Stephen was starting to do things that evening before I left that I recognized from people that are getting ready to pass, and I didn't want it to be true. But he started to pull at his hospital gown and say, I got to get this off. I got to get this off, and he would pull at it. And what I know from experience is that when a soul is getting ready to drop the body's like a heavy, old, hot coat. Not working so well, itchy, woolly, prickly, and the person can often start to pull at what they're wearing, trying to get this thing off me. So he started to do that, and I tried to, exit stage left, put that thought out. That's not happening. Nothing to see here. Jedi mind trick. My brother Steve and I would always joke about the Jedi mind trick. Nothing to see here. Your brother's not trying to pull his clothes off right before he dies, like souls do when they're getting ready to pass. And my brother Michael spent the night, which was good, and apparently all night long he was trying to get his new clothes. And my brother Michael told me that in the morning. He said, Stephen so many times during the night said, let's go. I got to go. Got to get my new clothes. Let's go get my new clothes. And then I shared with my brother Michael what I know about that with clothes. And so the next morning, February 6th, Stephen started to show signs of cognitive decline. He was fluent in Chinese, and so he started speaking more in Chinese than in English when asked a question. Also, when asked what year it was, he would only give what year it was in the Chinese New Year, which I wish I could remember in this moment, whether it's the year of the pig or the donkey or the rat, but that's what he would answer, not 2019. When asked what month it was, he would just say November all the time. And he said one complete sentence. I think the last complete sentence that he said to me was, he looked over at me. He opened his eyes because his eyes were starting to close a lot then. And he looked over at me and he said, and now it's time to hear the voice of my sister Cindy. And I can tell you in that moment, I knew two things instantaneously throughout my whole being, my body, mind, and my soul. My brother Stephen was getting ready to die, and he was asking me to be the guide that I can be. And instantaneously, I knew that he was giving me a final charge for Unleashed, the Cindy McKeever project. But first things first, right? And so I began to tell him how I felt about him. First, I did my job as a sister before I did my job as a healer and a spiritual guide, as a midwife for the souls that are crossing realms. I said, Stephen, you have been and are the most amazing brother. I have grown in my relationship with you. You have been a constant source of love, encouragement, wisdom, laughter, friendship, fun, just an ever-present friend. I can't believe how blessed, how lucky I am that you are my brother. And at that point, Steve, basically what he could say then in response to people was like, he would just soak it in. There's a picture of him from his wedding when they were receiving a toast, and I put that in the pictures at his funeral on the poster boards like we do. But it was just that face where his eyes would close and his chin would go up a little bit, and he would just go, "Aww, aww." I mean, just the sweetest, most tender receiving of that. And then I started to do my job. Take the sister role and add the healer role. And I started to talk to him about what it means to have a body and a soul, and that the body is like a coat, and it gets heavy sometimes, and it gets old sometimes, but the soul, when it drops it, it's like total freedom. It's like having the best poo of your life. It's like, oh, yes. And my brother Steve and I, we like talking about poo and butts, too. I want to tell you one of the last conversations I had with him before he had, which was a stroke caused from unmanaged high blood pressure, God bless him, was pilonidal cyst. I don't know if you know that what a pilonidal cyst was, but it's the cyst at the base of your tailbone. We would joke that it's the tail that never grows. It's the vestigial ass tail that human beings still have. And so I think it's like 50% of the population have it, and a small subset of those that will get infected. I had the great displeasure of having that grow and get infected in college and going to the James Madison University Health Center and having that thing lanced. I want to tell you how much healing I've done as a human being, that I can in this moment speak these words into this microphone to whoever will listen, because at that period in time, as a 20-something-year-old young woman, that was horrifying to have that doctor have me bend over and lance this pus-filled thing off my ass. Oh, she's a very pretty girl. The kind you don't take home to mama. But Stephen had one of those things too. We both had tails. I guess the skinny ones didn't have it in the family, but the two fat ones had this pilonidal cyst. And it had just grown to some epic proportions on a trip back from Amsterdam, and it had ruptured. And he called with great delight to tell me about the color of pus and blood that he was squeezing from that. And I was horrified with sickness and nausea as he was telling me this, and I was yelling at him, "Stop, I'm going to vomit." This is so amazing too, because in this moment, just yesterday, I was telling someone, not much disgusts me. And I said, but recently someone told me something that did make me sick, but I can't remember what it was. And I was trying to remember it and I couldn't, but here it is right now. This is what I remember. It was Stephen in one of our last conversations of his life. So appropriate for our relationship. I mean, that was a relationship with my brother. We could sit and talk about ass cysts, pus, and we continue the conversation with each other. But it was magnificent. It was a magnificent event, this thing that popped and continued to pop on the plane back from Holland. So anywho, meanwhile, back at the ranch, I was helping my brother drop his body. So let's go back to that part of the story. And I said the prayers that I know to say, the prayers about God being everywhere and everything, manifest and unmanifest, imperceptible and independent, eternal and imperishable, all merciful and eternally benevolent, infinite knowledge, infinite power, infinite bliss, that whatever we are of something huge. We are a drop soul in an ocean. The soul that we are is made of the same substance of the ocean, and we have a temporary journey when the drop comes out of the wave and seems to be separate from the ocean. That would be our life, and then it merges back with the ocean. And when a soul drops a body, it drops that heavy form and merges back in to that which it is. And I said prayers of forgiveness, prayers of just releasing and forgiving everything, selfishness, hatred, lust, slander, hypocrisy, hurtful, intentional hurtful actions or thoughts to ourselves or others, total washing of forgiveness, and prayers of love and devotion to what is true, to the one truth. And I played chants that help heal and help release that which binds us. And I brought essential oils, frankincense and lavender, and also rose oil from Ephesus, Turkey, that my mom and I had gotten on a trip to Turkey. There's a place, St. Paul of the Christian tradition, wrote letters to the Ephesians in Ephesus. Ephesus was a matriarchal community. Stephen and I love to tell this story. We love to tell the story of Ephesus because he had been to Ephesus too. So in Christianity, St. Paul writes these letters to the Ephesians because they put him in jail, because when he came preaching the message of Christ, I don't remember exactly what it was, but whatever he was preaching was going to damage their economy, and Ephesus was a matriarchal community, and the women, they put him in jail. We're like, what? You're not going to suppress our commerce with this talk of this guy, whatever. So they put him in a jail in Ephesus. And Paul was writing letters to the Ephesians. But Paul was writing letters to the people to kind of let him out. Now, Paul, again, fabulous, amazing saint, lover of God, all of that. But you have to remember the times. So Paul wrote this famous letter that has been used, at least in Catholic literature, for years and years. And he wrote, wives should be submissive to their husbands, and husbands should love their wives as if it's their own body. And so this wives should be submissive to their husbands stuff made me batshit crazy for years. I've come to know that the feminine principle is not of that of submission, it's of surrender to love. And that we both have masculine and feminine energy in us. To love, the masculine principle or the active principle is to love unconditionally. And if you're not loving your body, how can you love someone else's? How can you love your wife's body or your partner's body? And wives, or the feminine principle, submit to your husbands, but to receive that love. Surrender to that love in your body, in your mind, in your soul. I do a very good job of transposing almost every Christian teaching that used to make me go crazy and to bring it into something I can digest. But my mom and I got rose oil from a house that was said to be where Mary went to live with St. John after Jesus lived. It's an amazing place on the planet. And that rose oil I anointed him with. That rose oil I've used for people only when they're birthing a new soul into the world or birthing their soul into the next realm. And then the surgeon came, and the surgeon spoke to my sister and my brother and my sister-in-law and I, and my father. I don't remember if my father was there for that exact conversation. He might not have been in the room at that time, in the waiting room. And the surgeon said, the bleed is growing. He's losing awareness. I recommend surgery now to catch it before it gets too bad. And in that moment, I had a feeling of huge open expansion in my body, and I wanted to say no to the surgery. And I knew that that was not my place. My place was to be a support for my sister-in-law, who was the person to make the decision with the surgeon. And of course, she looked to all of us. Cindy, what do you think? I said, Tamara, what do you think? And she said, yes, surgery. And the surgeon said, yes, surgery. And knowing that I don't know everything, and knowing about allowing people to have their journey, I connected in with my personal relationship with God, and I said, oh, the surgery. And I was told so clearly, I felt it. When I say told, I felt it, not to worry, that God had him. He was his. And I in this moment, I feel that feeling too. And so Stephen was prepared for surgery, and it took longer for the surgeon to do the surgery because he had some other things that went longer. I mean, I say that so glibly. I mean, a neurosurgeon, what he's doing that went longer is some intense stuff. And like a crazy scene, there was this movie, While You Were Sleeping, with Sandra Bullock and Bill Pullman, I think, where this man is in a coma, and the family the whole nuclear family goes from room to room and follows around. We followed Stephen's gurney down to the surgery center, and we all crammed into the elevator. And Stephen wasn't talking much then. And we came down and we met the surgeon and the anesthesiologist, and we're all standing around. And they're telling us the dangers of the surgery because he was in severe cardiac, what's the word for it? Heart failure, when your lungs have fluid in them. And so the surgery was dangerous. I remember looking at that surgeon, and my niece Maya Rose was there. She was 10. At a certain point, it was time to kind of pay attention to her. Like I felt this shift at a certain point that my job was to pay attention to her more than Stephen. And I felt her there, and I had her with me, and she was next to her mom. And my brother Stephen was being spoken to by the anesthesiologist, asking questions, and he was responding in Chinese. He was saying "Xie xie ni" to the anesthesiologist, and I was saying, he's saying thank you in Chinese to you. And as he was wheeling out, the last words that we heard him say ever was to my niece Maya, to his daughter. He said, "I love you" in Chinese to her, which she speaks Chinese. She said to him. then we went to the waiting room, and it was wicked. It was a wicked. I don't know how long it was, hour and a half. Within 20 minutes, the sense of dread and sinking and pain that I felt in my core, in my belly, in my heart, and sitting with my father and his wife, Becky, the love of our lives, and my sister, Amy, and my niece, Emily, who goes to school in Seattle. She came. She had recently gotten engaged, and we had never met this young man. He came into the waiting room. This guy met his whole entire in-law family in the waiting room during surgery. I mean, talk about an emotional place. Stephen's stepdaughter, Caitlin. And it was torture. And we looked at each other and we talked about it. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. And it went longer and way longer than it should have. And the surgeon came out and wanted to talk to us, and the adults went to a different part of the waiting room, and the younger people were in the other part, and he started to talk to us, and he was visibly shaken. And he started to tell us that they couldn't get oxygen to my brother Stephen for a very long time once they intubated him. That they had to drill multiple holes in his head to try and find a place that they could take the hematoma out, and it was very difficult, and they finally did. And the actual surgery for the bleed was successful. But the significant amount of time that his pulse ox was around 50. I mean, anything under 90 is not so great. And I was shaking physically. My body had tremors that I didn't have any ability to control. I tried everything I know to do: ground into the earth, breathe, call on support. And I was sitting next to my sister-in-law Tamara and my sister Amy, and we had our hands on her. And I would say every one of us, I will never forget, and I see this in my mind's eye right now, the scene of us in the semicircle. My brother Michael, my dad, Becky, Amy, Tamara, me. And I looked at them to try and ground in them, and the looks on all of their faces. The shock, the pain, the trying to process what was being said to us. And I tried to be in service to them until I realized that I couldn't. It was bigger than me. I just had to breathe and try to take this in myself. My role that time, at that moment, was just me. Which is always a good role to have, by the way, just me. And my brother Michael asked, is there any hope? And he gave us a time frame of 7 days to wake up. There's always possibility. And he said he's going to go home that night, the surgeon said, and think about this case. So that night we went to our third hotel in 3 nights. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. And that's when I found out the information that apparently Tacoma was just the hot spot to be in this snowy February day. And everybody was going to Tacoma. And in the middle of the night, I started to cry. My sister and I were in the hotel room. I don't know where my brother Michael was, whether he was in another hotel, but it was just my sister, or maybe he went with my sister-in-law. I don't remember, but I started to cry and I was crying that to God, I don't want to go through the process of missing my brother. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that, God. I hate that. It's so horrible. I know from my mom and my grandmother and my friends and my in-laws, and that process is years. The first year is horrible, and the second year is terrible. Third year, it starts to lighten. That's a long process. And so my sister started crying. We were both crying, and she said, do you have any messages saved from him? Do you have any messages? And I'm like, I don't know, because, when certain people get of a certain age, I start saving their messages in case they die. Like, my grandmother had messages from my mother, had messages from her. My dad, I'm intentionally not saving messages from him because I don't want him to die soon. So we started with teary eyes, bleary, crazy, going through our phones. And my sister was getting mad. He never leaves me messages. He never leaves me messages. And I'm like, well, he leaves me messages. I think he leaves me messages. And I couldn't find any. And finally, I found one. And so this is the message I'm going to play for my brother Stephen. And in response to me saying, I don't want to go through the process of missing you.
All right, well, we're bound to miss each other, so anyway, number 2 brother, tag, you're it. Love you. Bye.
Okay, imagine that. I'm crying because I don't want to miss it. And his message, the one that I find from December 11th, 2018 is, well, I guess we're destined to miss each other. Well, so that wasn't a good sign. Well, it wasn't a bad sign either. It was just like, well, all signs point to death. By the way, for all of us, all signs point to death for all of us. Which also, remember, is a synonym for forgiveness, letting go, and rest. Mazel tov, who doesn't want more of that? I do. So the next morning when I got to see Steve and we were there, he still looked like himself. He still looked like he was in his body. And we were going with the he was going to wake up theme. And we started to make a schedule. Like this was going to be a long haul of therapy for him. So we started to decide who was going to stay and we were going to rotate. So my dad and Becky stayed. My brother Michael was going to come next. And then I was going to come after that. And then Amy, just to support my sister-in-law Tamara. We were going to do the long-term round robin of care for Stephen. So my sister Amy and I went home and I was praying and I called on everyone. My brother Stephen received prayers and healing energy from some of the most powerful healers on the planet. The community of people that I am blessed to know and love me sent him lifetimes of healing. I'm unbelievable to all of us. I will forever be in awe and in gratitude of the power of what these human beings, these spiritual beings having a human experience sent to all of us. And it was coming. And I know that even though Stephen died, because of course we're all going to die, he received such a spiritual boon from the love and prayers that came his way. But there was a point Wednesday night when I was home. I was home for a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, where I started to feel his soul leaving, and I got mad at him. And I said, you be the miracle. I was in my car driving somewhere. I'm like, you be the miracle, Steve. You've always wanted other people to be the miracle. He was always for the underdog and the miracle healing. Even when my mom was dying, literally dying, he thought she was going to live. When she had signed a do not resuscitate, she was on hospice, she had made her amends, she was dying. There could be a chance. I said, maybe it's for you. You be that miracle. And the next morning when I woke up and started to pray and send healing energy, I physically couldn't pray for his physical health, and any attempt to send healing energy went nowhere. And later that day, he had an MRI of his brain. Because he was big, he had to be stable enough to be moved to another location to accommodate his size, especially in that kind of comatose state. And that night, because my brother Michael was there, they got the news and he called me. It was Valentine's Day. And I was home with my family, and he said, Stephen is not coming back. He has pervasive, severe brain damage in his entire brain, both hemispheres. There's no chance for survival. And even if there were, it would be a persistent vegetative state. And the recommendation is to take him off life support. Oh, oh, how do you respond to that? And they were inclined to do it fast. So I said, well, hold the phone, hold the fort. I'd like to be there for that. I'd like to actually sleep at home tonight. There's no rush. He's on life support, right? It wasn't that my brother was fast to do that. I mean, it was just the mind was just racing with what to do. And so my dad had just arrived home with his wife, and it was a lot on him. And it was our recommendation and his feeling that they did not need to be present for that. Not that we told them not to do it. It was just in wholeness for them to stay home and to have some time. They were there for those 10 days in the freak snowstorm, in the multiple hotels and Airbnbs and everything that we found. So my brother Michael stayed, obviously, and my sister and Amy and I came out. And my husband came out, and my daughter came out. And when I saw Stephen that next day, that Friday, February 15th, the change in his appearance from when I left on Tuesday to that day was remarkable. It was from someone who was sleeping to someone who was no longer there. And his face was contorted and drooped. His body was having some seizures. And I brought my bag of hocus pocus. I had chants going to help the soul cross. I had crystals and oils, and we called an amazing Jesuit priest, a young Jesuit priest from a church in Tacoma to come, and we had last rites the next morning. And we sang, Let There Be Peace on Earth, and we sang How Great Thou Art, and we sang the prayer of St. Francis, and we sang Fly, Eagles, Fly, because he loved the Philadelphia Eagles, because that is like a spiritual, psycho-spiritual relationship that people have with their sports team, especially Philadelphians. And Stephen, didn't matter where he went in the world, he was Philadelphia sports fans through and through. Eagles, Phillies, Flyers. 76ers, I knew I was missing one. I don't want to miss one. I don't know if he was a fan of the Philadelphia Soul, but... And so we sang that, and it was beautiful. And his nurse that day, his name was Emmanuel. And Emmanuel was going to be the person that was helping take him off of life support. And what a beautiful soul he was. And we needed to tell my niece Maya what was happening that day. And my sister-in-law Tamara said to me, Cindy, I can't tell her. And I was like, well, I can't tell her. That's got to come from her mother, not you. And she looked at me and she said, I can't. And I said yes. And now it's time to hear the voice of my sister Cindy. A charge that will be with me until I take my last breath. And so it was a really tender time. All the women were in the room. Stephen's wife, Tamara, her daughter, and Stephen's stepdaughter, Caitlin, my daughter, Michelle, my brother Michael's daughter, Emily, my brother Michael's wife, Tanya, my sister, Amy. It was the women that were in the room with Stephen and with Maya. And I said, Maya Rose, when you go to school and you're not thinking about your mom and your dad, do you still love them? And she said, yes. And I said, and do they still love you? Yes. I said, when I'm in Philadelphia and I'm not thinking about you and I'm not with you, do I still love you? She's like, yes. I mean, at this point, I think she's getting a little frustrated with the string of conversations because she's super highly intelligent. And obviously, the answer to all these questions is going to be yes. But I was laying the groundwork for the truth of what love is. I said, so then, after a couple more questions in that vein, so the truth about love is, love doesn't depend on the body or the mind. You don't have to be with someone in the body, and you don't have to be thinking about them to love them. So love is something much more than that. Being the incredible genius that she is, she understood that. And I said, so the body, a human body, is like a coat that love or the soul wears. And just like some coats get old and worn and tattered and you got to get a new coat or you outgrow it, what happens with people when we're getting ready to transition to the next realm, the heaven realm or the spirit realm, there's so many names for it, the soul or the part of us that loves, that forever part of us, it takes off that coat. It drops that coat because it doesn't need it anymore. It's not working anymore. And I said, so your dad's coat is broken and it doesn't work anymore. And it's time for his soul to drop it. And it's time for him to go to the next realm. And she said, but Aunt Cindy, I love that coat. And I said, I love that coat too, Maya. But it doesn't work anymore, honey. And it's his time to drop it. And it's going to happen today. And so those machines, those tubes in his body, they're like keeping the coat on him, but his soul really can't use it and his mind can't use it anymore. And so sometime today they're going to take those tubes out so the soul can just let go. Oh, sweet Lord. There's a song called Calling All Angels by Jane Sideberry, I think is her name. And there's a line in there talks about this world, about coming to this earth and hearing a baby cry. Oh, the heaviness, the body settles in. And it talks about, would you trade this life in with all that pain and suffering? But you would miss the sunlight on your face. And the line that I felt in that moment, I feel now. And feel the sweetness of leaving. So we left the room, and Emmanuel came with the adults to say what the process of removing the breathing tube would be, and he had asked us if we had any more questions. And I said, well, I have a question. I tend to ask most people this question when they say, if you have any more questions. So I thought I would ask it here. I'm like, yes, I have a question. What's the meaning of life? And he looked at me and he said, do you really want to know? And I said, well, yes, I do want to know. And he said, I think the meaning of life is to live for God and to serve God. That's what my brother's nurse named Emmanuel said right before he facilitated the removal of life support. And when it came time to remove that life support, I chose not to be there. And I had to work with myself because it's like, Cindy, you've been there for so many people's last breaths, but I had to honor that I could not be there to watch my baby brother's last breath. I could not. I had to have some compassion for myself in that moment. And that my brother was there, and my sister, and my husband, and others. I don't remember. I'm sorry. I think Caitlin was there. I couldn't be present for it. It hurt too much. And so they removed the tubes. I left for that. I couldn't listen to that. And I went in once, and I looked out, and then left, and then looked in the room once, and he was breathing, very labored breathing, like And he had very severe apnea due to his weight, and it sounded like that breathing, but also it looked like him in his face. Like the expressions of the trying to take the in-breath looked like him. And I couldn't do it. And my sister-in-law and her daughter, my niece Maya, and that was not for them either. It was just not our place at those moments. Plus, you don't know how long these things are going to go. It could be 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 weeks. And we went to a waiting room on another floor because the other waiting room was full, and we were sitting there. It was my sister-in-law, Tamara, me, my daughter, Michelle. I can't remember if Caitlin was there. I'm so sorry. And some other visitors, friends that were there. And all of a sudden, I started to feel very lightheaded. And Tamara said, I don't feel right. And I said, yes, there's a lot happening right now of the upper energy centers. Ground in, breathe, put your feet, imagine into the ground. We're safe. I put my hand on her shoulder and just tried to hold on. It was like an intense feeling, a vibration and movement like that was going to knock me over. And all of a sudden, there was this whoosh that came from my sister-in-law's direction, through her body, through me, and out me. And then a release. And we breathed, and she said, it's gone now. And I'm like, it is gone. And I said, are you hungry? It was a little bit after 12 noon. And she said, I haven't eaten yet. Neither has Maya. I said, let's go get some food. Michelle, my daughter Michelle, do you want to get some food? Let's go eat. And we got into the elevator to go to the cafeteria, and we went downstairs and to start to get our food, and I got a text from my husband, come up right now. And we came up, and in that time, Stephen had taken his last breath, and I believe visited us on his way out. And my dad had called my brother Michael right as he was taking his last breath, and my brother Michael said to him, Dad, he just took his last breath. He just took his last breath, Dad. And we came into the room, and it's amazing what the body looks like after the soul leaves. I mean, it really is. We are not the body. We are not the body. The change was immense and quick. And unpleasant, also, I must say. And I anointed his form for the last time, and I felt his energy gone from his body. And I looked at his hands that I had held those days before the coming back to remove life support. I held his hands and I studied them, and I remember the feeling, and I feel his beautiful hands and his fingernail beds in my hands right now. And I wondered what we are and what our attachment to the body is when it can go like this. And we sang Fly, Eagles Fly again, by the way, to him, because he's an eagle now, could fly. And we celebrated him. And then we said our final goodbyes. We looked at his form for the last time because he was going to be cremated. And that last look of the precious human body that serves our soul, we had our last look. And then we left. So this healing venture, this planetary force, is inspired continually and in ways beyond the mind's comprehension by the beautiful life, by the powerful dying, and the infinite love of my brother Stephen. And now it is time to hear the voice of Stephen's sister Cindy. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Archangel Azrael. Thank you, all the supports of the heavens and the earth. Thank you, my family. Thank you, all of you, for being with me in this moment in time. I am complete. In the immortal words of Porky Pig at the end of the Looney Tune cartoons that my brother Stephen loves so much and we loved watching as kids and as adults, that's all, folks.